Come back.
It was here. What if I miss?
Then we go hungry tonight.
The movie begins with a woman lying motionless in a pool of water, her face bruised and battered, clearly in a critical condition. The movie shifts to a young girl named Helena, who is running through the trees, searching for something. Her mother calls for her to come back, but Helena ignores the request and continues exploring.
Back.
Meanwhile, Helena eventually encounters her father, Jacob. Together, they prepare for the next hunting trip, with Jacob patiently guiding her at every step. Despite her youth, Helena shows remarkable skill. During their outing, they spot a deer grazing nearby. Jacob hands Helena his rifle, urging her to take the shot. But the deer escapes before she can act, showing she still has much to learn. Back home, Helena notices her mother is agitated and confides in Jacob about her mother's frequent anger. The following day, while wandering in the woods, Helena hears her mother screaming. She rushes to find her father, pulling her mother from the river, where she nearly drowned. That evening, Helena practices her beloved bird flute, but stops when her mother voices disapproval. The next morning, Helena and her father head out on another hunting trip. At one of their traps, they discover a wolf's leg caught inside. Jacob explains the wolf likely chewed off its own leg to escape, leaving Helena puzzled. Later, while playing with her father, she notices 3 of his teeth gleam with gold. One night, Helena is awakened by distant howls. Curious, she opens the door to find a starving wolf outside. Jacob joins her and observes the animal's frail state. When Helena suggests feeding it scraps, Jacob refuses, saying they shouldn't disrupt nature's balance. Instead, he gives her his rifle, urging her to put the wolf out of its misery. Helena hesitates, unable to harm the helpless creature. Frustrated, Jacob takes the gun and kills the wolf himself, firmly reminding her of the importance of protecting her family. The next morning, Jacob prepares for a solo hunting trip. Helena wants to join, but he convinces her to stay by promising to bring back a surprise. That night, Helena and her mother share a strained silence as they sleep alone. The following day, Helena spends time outside near their home. A man on a quad bike appears, lost in the dense forest, and asks for directions to the city. Helena is stunned. She has never met anyone outside her family or seen anything like the quad bike. Suddenly, her mother rushes out, desperately begging the man to help her and Helena escape before Jacob returns. Before they can act, a gunshot rings out. The man collapses, dead.
That's why I'm hurt.
As Jacob emerges, rifle in hand. Panicked, Helena's mother grabs her and tries to flee on the quad bike. However, Helena, deeply attached to her father, resists and refuses to leave. Desperate, her mother knocks Helena unconscious with a rock and escapes into the dark forest. When Helena wakes, she finds herself in an unfamiliar bed at the local police station. Disoriented and confused, she scans the room until a kind officer named Clark approaches her. He reassures her that she's safe now, but Helena only wants to see her father. Helena is stunned when her mother claims Jacob kidnapped them years ago and forced them into isolation. Refusing to believe it, Helena clings to Jacob's teachings.
Took me to the woods.
You're lying.
Concerned, Officer Clark locks her in a room, but using the survival skills Jacob taught her, she escapes through the window. Helena wanders through the city. Then, the sound of a bird flute catches her attention. Following it, she finds her father in a hidden alley. Their reunion is emotional. But as Jacob tries to take her, the police arrive. He promises to return for her, but his escape is thwarted. Years later, Helena is now an adult, working in an office and living a stable life. After work, she picks up her daughter, Marigold, from school, and the two share a close bond, often spending time at the park. Marigold, curious about the tattoos, asks when she can have one, but Helena firmly forbids it. At home, they are greeted by Helena's caring husband, Stephen. Meanwhile, a police car is shown transporting prisoners, including an older Jacob. Despite his frailty, he secretly unlocks his handcuffs using a hidden pin and overpowers the guards, determined to escape. The next day, Helena returns home to find the police and FBI agents swarming the house. The chief informs her that Jacob has escaped custody with another inmate. When questioned, she denies knowing anything. Stephen overhears and is stunned to learn her father, the infamous Marsh King, is alive. That evening, Helena briefly calls Stephen, who says he and Marigold are staying at a hotel for safety, leaving her feeling isolated. Later, Helena retrieves a box of tools from the basement, finding the bird whistle and dagger her father gave her long ago. Memories of her troubled past flood back. Unable to sleep, she takes a midnight swim in a nearby lake. Meanwhile, Jacob and the escaped prisoner are picked up by a group of men. The next morning, Officer Clark visits Helena, showing genuine concern for her well-being. Though Helena remains guarded, Clark shares that he once hoped to bring her and her mother into his family, but her mother's tragic death made it impossible. Despite this, he still considers Helena like a daughter. Their conversation is interrupted when another officer summons Helena to the station for urgent news. There, the chief informs her that Jacob and his accomplice died in a fiery car crash near the border, though their bodies were badly burned. Jacob was identified by his gold teeth. Helena is left in shock.
The car hit a tree and caught fire. Both men were burned beyond recognition.
She struggles to process the news, thinking back to the belief she had held for years that her father had already been dead for 2 decades. That evening, Stephen and Marigold return home, and Helena embraces her daughter tightly. Stephen forgives her for the lies, but asks why she hid the truth. Helena admits that she feared he would never have married her if he had known about her past. Understanding her fears, Stephen reassures her, but asks for honesty moving forward. As Stephen prepares for work, he tells Helena he just wants her to trust him and not assume the worst. Touched by his sincerity, Helena stops him and reveals the tattoos on her body, explaining their meanings. She asks if he can still love someone like her, the Marsh King's daughter. In response, Stephen embraces her warmly. The next morning, Helena, Stephen, and Marigold visit Clark. Thrilled to meet Marigold, Clark expresses his hope she will one day call him grandfather. He shows Helena a collection of photos he's kept of her over the years, a sign of his enduring care for her. Helena's past haunts her again when she sees a 3-legged wolf on the street, triggering unsettling memories. That night, she dreams of Jacob standing by her bed. But it's just a nightmare. The next morning, she notices muddy footprints inside the house and fears Jacob has broken in. Her worry subsides when she realizes the culprit is Marigold, tracking mud from the playground. Later, while walking through the city, Helena hears the haunting sound of a bird flute and glimpses a man resembling her father. When she tries to follow him, he disappears into the crowd. These events convince Helena that Jacob is still alive. To protect her family, she builds a fence around her house with bells and sets a trap designed to catch him. That night, the bells rang, startling her. Armed with the knife her father once gave her, she ventures outside, only to find an injured rabbit caught in the trap. She calls Clark to report it, suggesting someone else placed the rabbit there, but Clark dismisses it, thinking it could have been injured another way. The next morning, Helena finds Marigold playing with stick figures like those she made as a child. Alarmed, she demands to know where Marigold got them, but her daughter has no answer. Convinced Jacob is near, Helena quickly drops Marigold at school and goes to Stevens' office. Without revealing her suspicions, she tells him she'll be away for a while, promising it's her last secret. Despite his concern, she refuses to explain. Determined, Helena drives to the forest of her childhood, turning off her phone to avoid being tracked. Certain Jacob is hiding there, she uses an inflatable boat to navigate the dense swamp. Surrounded by familiar waterfalls and trees, memories resurface. But she quickly regains focus. Arriving at the old cabin she once called home, she steels herself for what lies ahead. Inside, Helena hears a familiar voice and is shocked to find Jacob alive. After 20 years, they reunite. And he takes her on a walk through the forest. Nostalgically, he points out places from her childhood, reminiscing about their time together and confessing how much he's thought of her. Despite her swirling emotions, Helena remains calm, concealing her unease. Jacob eventually takes Helena to a river where a boat waits. He urges her to bring Marigold so they can cross into Canada and start a new life together. Helena firmly refuses, stating she has a family now. When Jacob insists that their life in the forest was perfect, Helena remembers the day she saw him dragging her mother from the river and realizes he had been drowning her as punishment for trying to escape. Summoning her courage, Helena declares she is leaving and warns him to stay away from her family. Saddened, but appearing to accept her decision, Jacob embraces her and lets her go. As Helena makes her way back, she is startled to see Clark appear in the forest. Worried about her disappearance, Stephen had contacted the police, but Clark had come to find her. Before Helena can explain, Jacob emerges and shoots Clark in the chest. Helena watches in horror as Jacob collapses and dies before her eyes. Jacob drags Helena back to the cabin and throws her into a pit before leaving to find Marigold, intent on bringing her back to the forest. Trapped, Helena remembers her mother saving her from a similar situation, the one person who truly cared for her. The memory reignites her resolve to protect her daughter. Determined, Helena uses all her strength to climb out of the pit, breaking the bamboo lid to secure her escape. She heads to Jacob's weapon stash and retrieves a sniper rifle. Spotting him rowing away in a boat, she takes aim but misses under the pressure. Jacob dives into the river to escape, and Helena pursues him relentlessly. The chase leads Helena into an open field where she uses the survival skills Jacob taught her. Despite her efforts, his experience gives him the upper hand. Hiding in a puddle, he wounds her leg and restrains her with handcuffs, forcing her to guide him back to her boat. Along the way, Jacob professes his love, but Helena rejects his words. At a steep ledge, Helena pretends to slip, causing them both to tumble down the hill, ending up unconscious. When she awakens, thoughts of her family drive her to reach for a gun. Jacob regains consciousness, and in their final struggle, Helena overcomes him and kills him. As the movie ends, she rows through the dense swamps, battered but free, determined to return to her daughter and the life she fought to protect. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Thanks for watching.